Hey everybody, how's it going today? Ian back here with you, Entertainment Examiner. Hey, I'm going to be starting to do some music reviews on this channel. I'm a big rock fan, so I'm going to be reviewing some new rock albums. So if you're like a classic rock fan, modern rock fan, hopefully if that strikes your interest and you guys want to watch, take a look. I'm going to be reviewing a new album from one of my favorite bands, Queensryche, called The Verdict. Queensryche, just a little bit of history on them. They are a band from Seattle, came around in the early 80s with a terrific lineup. Jeff Tate, their original lead singer, was probably one of the best singers to come out of the 80s, had an amazingly powerful voice. The two guitar players, Chris DeGarmo and Michael Wilton, Eddie Jackson on bass, and Scott Rockenfield on drums. That was the lineup for a long time throughout their early 80s albums like The Warning and Rage for Order. In 1988, they came out with an album called Operation Mindcrime, which is one of my all-time favorites. It is one of the best concept albums ever made. The follow-up, Empire, probably had their biggest single with Silent Lucidity, which is a beautiful ballad written by DeGarmo. And so in the mid-90s, after the Here and the Now Frontier album, Chris DeGarmo left the band, and he's been out of music ever since. I think he's a pilot, if I'm mistaken. Like, he's completely out of music. But I did hear an interview recently with Queensryche upon the release of this new album, and they said that they're still in contact with DeGarmo, and everything is good with him. So he's just one of those guys that kind of made his mark and got out, which is really too bad because Chris DeGarmo was one of the main songwriters of Queensryche and also a really good backup singer and a great guitar player. Him and Michael Wilton's guitars were fantastic together. And so after DeGarmo left in 97, they had quite a few lineup changes, and Jeff Tate really took a more prominent role in the band. Their music really diminished. There was a song, an album called Q2K in 2000, and a song called Breakdown that was really good. But after that album, things really started to tick downwards, especially with the release of Operation Mindcrime 2 in the mid-2000s, which wasn't near as good as the original, and an album called Dedicated to Chaos, which really lives up to its title. So in 2000, I want to say 10, the band had a huge falling out with Jeff Tate, who had really taken over most of the songwriting. And by the time Dedicated to Chaos came out, Queensryche sounded nothing like the Thinking Man's metal band that they called themselves, and had this extremely distinct sound in the early to mid 80s. The music was all over the map. Jeff Tate and an outside songwriter had taken over a lot of the songwriting duties. It had become more alternative and more kind of whatever musical genre they wanted to fit in there. So it was a very messy breakup with the band, and the other four guys in Queensryche kept the name, and Jeff Tate got the rights to the Operation Mindcrime storyline, which was his. The concept album for Operation Mindcrime, that's Tate's story. So, as far as I know, it took him a while to get all this hammered out. So I'm having issues with my mic. As far as I know, Jeff Tate's the only one who can perform that album in its entirety, which he's done many times. The band has done many times, doing Mindcrime in its entirety. But the other band gets to retain the name Queensryche, and they can still perform songs from that album, but not in like the entire album for an evening like they used to do. But that's okay, because Queensryche has a new lead singer now named Todd LaTorre, who is an amazing singer. Todd is the injection that Queensryche needed. They released a self-titled album with him in 2013, and it was exactly what Queensryche fans have been wanting for so long. After the Dedicated to Chaos album came out, people were done with the band. Like, I'm not getting any more Queensryche. Once Todd LaTorre stepped in and the other guys in the band stepped back into a writing role, then that great Queensryche kind of progressive metal sound came back. And they did another album called Condition Human, which was a great album. And yeah, we have the third album called The Verdict. I really like this album. There's a lot. It's 10 tracks, but there's a lot in it. I listened to the album once in its entirety, and a few of the tracks, the singles, Blood of the Levant, Man in the Machine, and Dark Reverie, I listened to those a few times. I really like what I hear on this album. I'm going to listen to it again, definitely, because there's a lot in there. It reminds me of the early Queensryche albums like The Warning and Rage for Order, and that in these little 4-minute songs they just pack them with a lot of different elements, and that's what I like about Queensryche. Not everything hit with me. Some of the stuff was a little, I think, too far in that direction. As much as I absolutely love Queensryche being back with that classic sound again, sometimes I think they went a little too far. But I'm comfortable enough giving this album a 3 out of 4, maybe even a 3.5 out of with another listen. People are loving this album though, which I think is amazing that Queensryche has their fan base back, and I'm thinking I might try to go see them live in a few months if I can get a ticket, because they're a band I've never seen before, and I've always really enjoyed them. So yeah, pick up The Verdict if you're especially if you're like a classic Queensryche fan. Yeah, you may be sour on the fact that Jeff Tate is not in there anymore. I don't think Jeff Tate can really sing a lot of the old stuff very well anymore. I've heard some of the stuff he's doing now with his solo band, who are called Operation Mindcrime. And I don't think the music he's making now really appeals to me. If it did, I'd be more than happy to get it. When bands split, I usually don't take a side. I like to listen to both sides equally, and I usually end up liking both sides. That's not really the case here. I love what Queensryche is doing. I'm not really a big fan of what Jeff Tate's doing, but I respect him for doing what he wants to do. So, yeah, pick up The Verdict today. Todd LaTorre's vocals are crazy. Also, something you should know about this album, their original drummer, Scott Rockenfield, is not on it. Scott had a son a couple years ago and took time off from the band. And they thought he was going to come back, and he hasn't yet. But I guess he's given the band his blessing to go ahead with this album. I guess he's just enjoying being a dad. So, I mean, Todd LaTorre, the lead singer, is actually a drummer, so he plays drums on this album. So you have Todd, Michael Wilton, Eddie Jackson, and Parker Lundgren, a young guitar player, has been in the band for quite a while now. Parker's a great guitar player, and he's a great writer. He writes this song, Dark Reverie, and Parker's a really good writer. It's just great to see all of them take songs again together and bringing back what is, I think, essentially their sound, and saying, hey, this is ours, we're going to own it. So yeah, pick up Queensryche The Verdict, CD, iTunes, wherever you get your music, Spotify, wherever you do. So yeah, take a listen. I think you'll really enjoy this album. So okay, that's all I got for this album review. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.